Presidential candidates have signed the final peace accord that signals their commitment to peaceful and transparent polls. It follows a recent wave of attacks, violence attacks, which have stoked fears about the ability of Nigeria's security forces to protect voters at the polls this weekend. Tunji Olanikpa can file this report.
Saturday's election will be taking place at a time Nigerians are experiencing cash and fuel scarcity, with its attendant tension across the country. This is why the last peace accord signing by politicians is important to get the major actors committed to pre-election, election, and post-election peaceful conduct by their supporters. Presidential candidates from 18 political parties and their party chairmen are represented here as they append their signatures to the peace treaty. President Muhammadu Buhari again re-emphasizes the readiness of his administration to pass a legacy of free and credible transition.
Since my assumption of office, we have worked so hard to ensure that we pass on a legacy of free, fair, credible, safe, and peaceful elections. We will continue to act with neutrality and allow the rule of law to take precedence over political expediency. I urge the candidates contesting these elections at all levels to respect the voice, the choice of voters, and accept the result of the elections as announced by INEC.
Chairman of the National Peace Committee, General Absalami Abubakar, advises candidates to use legal means to seek redress if need be, and not resort to undemocratic means.
Now that the election is only a few hours away, we are here to witness the second signing of the National Peace Accord to commit the presidential candidates, their party chairmen, and their parties to accept the outcome of the elections as long as it is judged to be free, fair, and credible.
Former head of state Yakubu Gowon enjoins the candidate to put the nation first and accept the result of the election as a demonstration of good sportsmanship. This position was echoed by former President Goodluck Jonathan, whose message was read by Bishop Matthew Kuka.
In every democracy, peace is a critical factor that breeds political, social, and economic progress. I passionately appeal to the political actors to embrace peace.
There is no better time to make this commitment than now, given the considerable levels of tension and apprehension so far experienced in the build-up to these elections. This is the time for the candidates and party leaders to demonstrate goodwill and impress upon it the cadres and followers that the election is not a war.
We are not praying to witness another Orubebe incident here. However, if this is to occur, I implore Professor Mahmoud Yakubu to behave like Professor Tairu Jega, who had handled the situation in a professional manner.
With the signing of the peace accord, Nigerians are very hopeful of free and non-violent election come Saturday as Nigerians get ready to pick President Buhari's successor.
After a hearing that lasted several hours, the Supreme Court has reserved judgment till March 3, I should say, in the suit filed by some APC states seeking to allow both old Naira notes and new Naira notes coexist as legal tender. The court rejected all moves by the counsel to the parties to further delay the case. Arise Judiciary editor Toby Shoni filed this report.
It's a parade of some of Nigeria's brightest legal minds. As brilliant as they are, the Supreme Court, determined to hear all arguments for and against the continued use of the old Naira notes, does not have the luxury of time to allow each of the lawyers expatiate on their submissions. But out of respect for Mr. Kanu Agabi, the counsel to the Attorney General of the Federation, who was also the most senior lawyer present, the court allowed him some time to shed more light on his written address. He insisted the Supreme Court does not have the jurisdiction to hear the case and that the plaintiffs were crying in the wrong court. He says they should have taken their case to the Federal High Court. In the course of the proceedings, the presiding justice, John Inyangokor, asked the question who addressed the nation to very high order. He also resisted vehemently all efforts by some of the lawyers to get the case further adjourned. He said the parties want to make the Supreme Court the scapegoat and that the court would resist such attempts. The court also seized the moment to call for further amendments to the 1999 Constitution to make sure that not all cases end up at the Supreme Court, adding that the caseload of the court is too high. Before the case was adjourned for judgment, counsel to the aggrieved states asked the court to grant all their reliefs. On the other hand, the federal government, Edo and Bayelsa states, asked the court to dismiss the case for lack of jurisdiction. On whether the court's earlier order that both the old and the new Naira notes should remain legal tender still subsists, the Supreme Court refused to make any statement on the matter. The lawyers at the court hearing later addressed journalists.
We are all working at trying to salvage a difficult situation. That's where we are. The Supreme Court is trying to do that. The President is trying to do that. It's one nation, one people. We are looking for solutions.
The President has the power, further to Section 23, to direct the CBN governor. But the time frame given for this policy to be implemented and the terms are very short, and it's not convenient for the plaintiffs and indeed Nigerians to conform.
The government is apprehensive that if this policy is not reversed urgently and speedily, we might witness another serious outbreak of violence in Lagos.
Right, we'll go straight to it, Ayo.
All right, let me speak, because of the limited time, I'll speak on the peace accord, the signing of the peace accord. As Dr. Bati mentioned when we opened the show, that we have only 2 more days to go to the general elections on the 25th of February, that's on Saturday, presidential and national assembly. Now, the importance and significance of that is that this time all the presidential candidates, 18 of them were present, and they signed in the presence of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who then gave a speech following that. I'd like to take a portion of his speech to emphasize this morning. He talked about the fact that following the elections, that contesting candidates or candidates contesting at all levels should respect the choice of voters and accept the results of the elections as announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission. I thought that was very important to highlight, because as you can feel the temperature and the atmosphere, you would see that tensions are high, and now it's the fight to the finish. It is crunch time, and today's the last day for campaigns, and so both candidates, the surrogates, spokespeople are on the mark. They are looking forward to seeing how this election will unfold come Saturday. However, it is very important for the sake of national security and peace that irrespective of the outcome in terms of who emerges once the announcement has been made by INEC and INEC alone, that the party officials, especially the candidates, are willing to respect the choices of Nigeria and work with whoever emerges as winner. Because what they're saying on the campaign ground today is that they're doing this for Nigeria, for the good of Nigeria, for the people of Nigeria. So they must remember this. Recall what happened in 2019 and let that be a yardstick when President Goodluck Jonathan at the time made that historic phone call 2015, made that historic phone call to the current president, Muhammadu Buhari. Before then, in 2011, under the CPC, President Muhammadu Buhari had contested against him where he lost. And he had actually taken the matter to court, and violence broke out in some parts of the north where Human Rights Watch had announced that some people lost their lives. No Nigerian life is worth the ambition of anyone. And so what we're asking the leaders to do, if you disagree with the results of the outcome, go through the judicial process. At the end of the day, the party members, Nigerians as a whole, must decide that we want this country to work, and it would not be at the expense of anyone. If you have issues, please go through the judicial process.
Dr. Abati?
Okay, let me start with where you left off. I think in terms of the symbolism of it, It's good that the National Peace Accord Committee has come forward again to get a full house of all the 18 political parties and their candidates to sign a peace accord, not just in the presence of President Muhammadu Buhari, but also in the presence of the international community, the leaders of the various election observation committees were in attendance. Baroness Scotland, President Thabo Mbeki, leading the African Union, President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, also leading, I think, the Commonwealth, and then President Joyce Banda, formerly of Malawi, also former president of Malawi, also leading a team, I think the American team in this particular case. So in terms of the attendance at that second peace accord, it looked really good and it looked really nice. The statements that were made that the various gladiators should respect the outcome of the election and behave themselves after the fashion of gentlemen. 2, that if anybody wants to seek any redress, that redress should be sought through legitimate and legal means. Okay, but the question to ask was the report that was given by the Peace Accord Committee led by General Abdulsalami Abubakar, that 44% of spokespersons did not respect the accord that was signed in September 2022. And we saw the clear evidence of that. 19% of the presidential candidates did not respect it. 26% of party members did not respect the peace pact. And we have seen the evidence. Information is given about attacks on facilities, attack on security personnel. Only yesterday, the Enugu East senatorial candidate was set ablaze, was killed, was murdered. Stations, media houses have been attacked across the country. There is threat of violence. There are some persons who are saying election will not take place. The takeaway is that the security agencies have their job cut out for them. The Chief of Defense Staff has said people will be given the bloody nose. Let us see what happens. Nigeria must be vigilant. I think vigilance is the important thing because the international community is watching. They are already on the ground here. We cannot behave like a rogue nation. There's another issue that I need to address, which is the Supreme Court. Now, yesterday, what their lordships did, the 7-man panel, was to consolidate all the various joinder suits. And then, at the end of the day, they said they would they adjourned the case till March 3. However, at the beginning of the matter, Justice Okoro had pointed out that every matter will be addressed. But at the end of the day, what we got was still an adjournment. But what you can take away from that court are certain pointers. The Supreme Court saying, for example, that politicians are looking for a scapegoat and that the Supreme Court will not be used as a scapegoat. So they acted strictly, it seems to me, in the interest of public policy. The Apex Court is a policy court. And what they have tried to do is to douse tension. Nobody can blame them. And in any case, the election is February 25. By March 3, there will be greater clarity about the direction. As for the other substantive issues, they took the arguments on jurisdiction, on whether the CBN should have been joined or not, and all of that. And they said they will give their judgment on March 3. Finally, the Supreme Court also pointed out that, look, if a man slaps his wife, it comes all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court of Nigeria is overburdened. But for now, what they have tried to do is to prevent a situation where they will descend into the arena. When the matter comes up, one of the things that will be most interesting will be what they will say about contempt proceedings, which I thought was brought up by one of the learned counsel. Who are they going to charge for contempt? Maybe, most possibly, the Attorney General of the Federation, who is the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, and who could be held responsible for perhaps misleading the President of Nigeria. But so far, the Supreme Court has acted, I think, with wisdom. I don't want to say that the Supreme Court tactically dodged. That would be presumptuous. But the Supreme Court acted with wisdom.
Right, a lot to be said yesterday. And I was happy for the attendance for the peace accord signing. And I hope I get the time to be able to speak on this. Yesterday, a particular president was there, Uhuru Kenyatta. And Uhuru Kenyatta gave birth to the peace accord in Nigeria. Father Martin Kuka, Bishop Martin Kuka, did say that it was after the violence in Kenya in 2014 that they saw the need for a peace accord in Nigeria because they don't want something like that to repeat itself. And that's why they brought about the peace accord. And since 2015, we've been signing this. The truth has to be said. Nigeria has descended into a level of violence that is unprecedented. INEC offices burnt. All of this because politicians want power. But like I said yesterday, the true power the politicians are fighting for is in your hand as a voter, the people. And you'll have to ask the question, suffer never tire you? And you have to answer the question based on how you want to vote, whoever the candidate you want to vote for. But one thing is supreme in all of this: the peace and stability of Nigeria is greater than any ambition of any politician. And that's what we should all hold on to. And that's why I beg you, citizens, do not allow them use you for violence, because politicians will manipulate everybody to get their own gains at the end. In the end, it is about them. It is their game. It is their game of showmanship and supremacy, not in your own interest. So think about what is in your own interest. The peace and security and continued existence of Nigeria is on your own interest. So when they lose elections and whip up sentiments and say they are fighting for you, remember it is themselves they are fighting for. And I'm happy the Supreme Court threw them out yesterday by saying that we will not be a scapegoat in this jostling for politicians. Because now over a Naira policy, the state and the federal government are at loggerheads. You can see the politicians for what they are, trying to play around things yesterday to be able to get their own way in the end. So we'll wait till the 3rd of March and see how that pans out. Cases about jurisdictions on the front burner, contempts on the front burner, even adding CBN to seats on the front burner. Kanu Agabi made very valid arguments, just like Mr. Mustafa made other very valid arguments. It was a good one for intellectual minds. But the subtext is when politicians fight their war, they drag all of us along. But they forget that there is only one political class and only one class of the people. The people must speak in this election. Vote wisely.